Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Travis with another episode of the Rep by Rep Strength Podcast. And in case you haven't noticed, most of these are pretty raw. So I am usually doing these while I am driving to an appointment of some kind. And, I'm not going to take a ton of time to go back and edit and all that stuff for the fancy production value. I'd rather just get some content out there, get the gist of the message, and make a difference that way. So anyway, I am driving to a meeting right now, and just got off work a little bit ago, went and picked up my kiddos, and they always kind of give me a good jumping off point for something to talk about. Because I see so many parallels from training that play directly into life. And anyway, both girls, so I've got two daughters, ages 6 and 3, and 6-year-old was at school today, and she was telling me on the way home that her stomach hurt. And I'm trying to run through, like, okay, have you eaten any food? Did you not eat lunch, or did you drink a sports drink or something new that you haven't had or not used to having? And, she goes on to tell me that she thinks it's from one of her friends kicking her in the stomach. And I'm like, wait a minute. What? What do you mean your friend was kicking you in the stomach? How's that work? Well, it started out like they were just playing around, and then playing with each other, kind of roughhousing or whatever. And then her friend starts kicking her in the stomach, and my daughter asks her to stop, and the other little girl does it a few more times and then finally stops. So my oldest is definitely a rules follower to a T. And to the point where she, just kind of stood there, I guess, from the description of her story, while this other little girl kept kicking her in the stomach. So it's like, hey, yes, there are rules. However, there are caveats to every rule. There are exceptions. Not everything is in stone, and since she's such a rules follower, I was talking to her, and I said, were you afraid to do something back because you knew that was breaking the rules? And she said yes. And that's the thing, is with most things in life, rules are pretty good guidelines for the most part. I mean, there's some that are, completely absurd, that people have not thought through in a long time to ask if something's still relevant. But at any rate, I told her that in order, if this happens again, you ask or tell your friend to stop. And then if they don't stop, your options from there are to either A, run away, or to B, fight and kick, punch, do whatever you want back to this kid, because I don't want that other kid picking on her. I want my daughter to stand up for herself, to stand her ground, and to show other little girls that they can't pick on her, boss her around, tell her what to do, or bully her in any way, shape, or form. So I told her, those are the rules. If you get in trouble by doing what I've instructed you to do as your parent, then I'll deal with the repercussions. We'll deal with it later. But, obviously there are rough guidelines here, but let's consider a few things. If she adhered or didn't follow any rule at all, that's bad. If she follows every rule to a T, that can also be bad. I mean, if she was just to stand there while this kid just kicks the crap out of her, that can absolutely be detrimental. So I was explaining to a 6-year-old the best way I could about, yes, these are guidelines, constraints, but there are there are exceptions, times where it is okay to bend the rules and times where it is flat out okay to break the rules. And that's not to say that there wouldn't be a consequence for both kids, because they're both would be in the wrong in that situation. But at any rate, there are certainly times to bend and break the rules. Now, bringing this back around to training is absolutely, there are times to bend the rules and to break the rules. And I think there are many times where people, especially when they're first getting into training, they read some things at a certain age or an impressionable age, and they never go back and reconsider, what was my mindset when I was reading this info? Have I checked this info against other sources to see if it's reliable and valid? So as an example, just simply using a bicep curl, like just call it a barbell bicep curl. If you only believe you should ever do a strict barbell curl, you will probably plateau very quickly. Now, on the other side of that does not mean that you should use garbage technique and a ton of body English to do a barbell bicep curl. There's kind of this wiggle room, this gray area that exists with training. Yeah, for the most part, you should stick to strict technique with full range of motion most of the time, greater than 90% of the time. However, when you're trying to bust through a plateau of some kind, there are situations where there's an exercise called a barbell cheat curl, where you can use a little bit of hip drive to perform the curl, and then you're trying your best to control the eccentric. So that's a classic training example of times where it's okay to bend/break the rules because I want to break through this plateau. So now going alongside that, if I have chronically garbage technique and I'm only chasing 1 rep maxes, that's a problem. So on the flip, if I'm only doing 20 RMs or 20 rep maxes and I'm using a weight that's so light where it's not challenging, and I'm staying with the same set rep volume scheme forever and always, that's also bad. So kind of understanding, what is one extreme, what's another extreme, what's the gray area that exists in between, and then also, start, like for your own training, just start playing with some stuff, sample some different things, and make notes along the way in a journal of some kind about, okay, this week I'm trying this. I'm going to keep this in here for 3 to 4 weeks and to see what progress do I notice. Do I go backwards? Do I stay the same? Do I get better? Those are pretty much your 3 options. So I think one of the mistakes that people will make early on is they'll try to do everything all at once whenever they start modifying and playing with their training program. And what I would say here is implement 1 to 2 new things that you want to modify or tweak or whatever, and then keep that in there for a cycle to 2 cycles or whatever. And if it's working, keep it in. No reason to change just for the sake of changing. And then from there, if it's not working, take it out. If it's keeping you about the same, maybe you keep it in, maybe you don't. But I would encourage you, especially if you're early, play with some stuff, see what works for you. Because, not to sound cliche here, but, everybody's unique. But by and large, what's going to serve most people the best is getting exceptionally good with their technique, and then finding whatever variation of the big lifts that's going to get you the highest return on your time, instead of trying to do a whole bunch of different exercises and not push the volume nor intensity, or both, too hard. You'd be better served basically performing 1 to 2 big exercises and gradually following, principle progressive overload and getting better and better each week. And then if something causes you to plateau, then you modify, change, whatever, and continue. So just wanted to throw that little nugget out there about kind of understanding the rules and constraints, and understanding the both ends of the continuum. So if you have more specific questions about that, please feel free to email me at jtbarrettfitness@gmail.com. And you can also join my private community, travisbarrett.com/community, where there's a 1-week free trial. And then you can make a selection from there to decide if it's for you or not for you. So I hope that helps. Look forward to hearing back from you guys. Have a good night.